Hi guys, hope everyone's doing well. So this is the start of chapter 12, and it's a chapter called Stoichiometry. Sounds like a really complicated word. It's not, we'll go over it and you'll be fine. But to start, I wanted to make something today. So we're going to start off with some flour, and then we're going to add some eggs to it. After that, we're going to go out to pasture and get some milk from some cows. And that'd be fun to do. Nevertheless, after that, some baking powder. So now, obviously, you know we're going to be making some kind of baked good. After that, we're going to add some cocoa. If you've ever been to Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh, they have a cocoa tree there, and if you look up, you can actually see the cocoa beans growing off of it. In the background of this picture, the bigger bean, that's what a cocoa bean looks like. So anyway, back to what we were talking about. Add some cocoa, and then lastly, we are going to add some red food coloring. So if we put all these together, probably with a little bit of sugar, we will get my favorite cake, red velvet cake. A little bit of cream cheese on top. It's just lovely. Anyway, so say if I gave you all those ingredients, but I didn't give you a recipe to follow. I just said add some milk, add some eggs, add some flour, add some sugar, so on and so forth, and actually didn't give you the measurements of the ingredients. Well, it's not going to come out nice like this. Instead, it's going to come out kind of gross like that and doesn't quite look edible. Say you're babysitting for, I don't know, younger sibling or whatever, and you're trying to make this, and it turns out horrible like this. Well, you're going to have definitely an unhappy camper on your hands. So how does this all relate to stoichiometry? So if you guys want to get out your notes, as always, anything in green words are important and you can copy down. So other than following the law of conservation of matter, we already went over this, that mass cannot be created nor destroyed in a chemical reaction. Therefore, we balance these chemical reactions with those coefficients that we put in front. So this pretty much acts like a recipe for a chemist to follow. And what chemists do is they use these balanced chemical equations in order to calculate how much reactant they need or how much product is formed. So if you recall, the reactants are always what we put into a chemical reaction. Those are always on the left side of the arrow, the yield sign, and then our products are on the right side. So we know all this already. This was a little bit of a review from chapter 11, but let's actually get into this chapter now. So stoichiometry. What is stoichiometry? It's the subject of chemistry that involves the calculation of quantities. If you recall from, I think, chapter 1, beginning of the year, I think like second week of school, a quantity is some kind of data that has a number attached to it. So think of it, if you have a certain quantity of, I don't know, jelly beans, you're asking yourself now, why does he always talk about jelly beans? Well, it's easy to use. But if you have a quantity of jelly beans, you're actually saying, oh, look, I have 10 jelly beans, or I have 15 jelly beans. But if you're talking about the color of those jelly beans, well, we really can't put a number to that. Like you can't say I have, so many red jelly beans. That red just describes the color, and then that number would describe how many jelly beans that you have. So quantitative and qualitative data. So let's just go over another example here. Kool-Aid. I don't know if you guys have ever done this before, but you can actually use Kool-Aid to tie-dye t-shirts. They come out kind of cool. You need a good bit of color in order to get that color to be real brilliant. As you can see in this picture, that they didn't really have a real brilliant color come out of them, but they would add more Kool-Aid to it. It would have came out a little more brilliant. Anyway, how do you make Kool-Aid? So you can either do it one of two ways. You can do it the normal way where you don't boil the water, or you can boil the water and actually it will become sweeter then because you can add more sugar to it, and that sugar just won't stick to the bottom. So when you're making Kool-Aid, you obviously need water, you need your Kool-Aid pack, and lastly, you need sugar. So let's say that you add your Kool-Aid pack, you add your sugar, and all of a sudden you start adding your water. Now, with that, you're going to have excessively too much water if you just start dumping it in and aren't measuring anything. After that, you really can't fix your Kool-Aid unless you add another Kool-Aid pack with the color in it, because your flavor is going to be real diluted, and all you're going to have is like some really sweet sugar water if you just keep adding that sugar. This kind of reminds me of I Love Lucy. If you guys have ever seen this episode, they had entirely too many chocolates for them to be able to wrap at one time, and they started stuffing them into their hats and eating them. As you can see on the left there, Ethel has a whole mouthful of chocolates. So this kind of relates to the Kool-Aid example, because they could not perform the activity of wrapping the chocolate fast enough. They had an excess of chocolate. Just like in the Kool-Aid example, we had an excess of water. So let's get back to some stoichiometry. Mole ratios. This is what you have to write down in your notes. This is a conversion factor derived from those coefficients of a balanced chemical equation. So whenever we balanced our chemical equation, we put those numbers in front, which we called coefficients. We're going to use those numbers now in order to make a mole ratio. Lastly, last thing I want to tell you guys today about the mole ratio is that we have to make sure that if there are no coefficients in front, it might not be a balanced equation. So your first step is going to be balancing that chemical equation in order to come up with a mole ratio. So again, we're going back to chapter 11, and we are going to again return to balancing those chemical equations, and that's going to be our first step. So tomorrow we're going to go over some examples with this, and we'll make some mole ratios, and then we'll start doing some stoichiometry problems. All right, so make sure you guys copy all this down into your notes if you need to watch the video again real quick, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.